It's ironic almost because these tools have taken enormous cognitive time under tension to develop. But in some ways, people are using them as a escape hatch for thinking in some ways maybe. Now, you might say, yeah, but we did that with the calculator and we just moved on to harder math problems. Do you feel like there's something different happening here? How do you think about this?
It's different there are some people who are clearly using ChatGPT not to think. And there are some people who are using it to think more than they ever have before. I am hopeful that we will be able to build the tool in a way that encourages more people to stretch their brain with it a little more and be able to do more. And I think that, society is a competitive place. Like, if you give people new tools, in theory, maybe people just work less, but in practice, it seems like people work ever harder and the expectations of people just go up. So my guess is that, like other tools, some people, or like other pieces of technology, some people will do more and some people will do less. But certainly for the people who want to use ChatGPT to increase their cognitive time under tension, they are really able to.
Mm.
And I take a lot of inspiration from what like the top 5% of most engaged users do with ChatGPT. Like, it's really amazing how much people are learning and doing and, outputting.
Sam is at least trying to be a bit realistic here by first acknowledging that, yes, there are going to be people in society who outsource their cognitive abilities to AI, and this could erode some of their critical thinking skills. But he's also making the point that in spite of that, there are always people who would take this tool and use it to sharpen and expand their knowledge base. So it's not all bad. The point Sam Altman is making here is complemented by this idea of the efficiency trap, which can work to our benefit or against us. This idea basically posits that increased efficiency does not automatically equate to less busy. And we can see countless examples of this. If you work in an office space, for example, and you decide that you're going to respond to as many emails as possible, you're going to get caught up as quickly as you can, that way you have more free time, what might end up happening is that now you're giving people the idea that you're a quick responder on these emails, and so they can go ahead and send you more emails and perhaps add even more work because you seem to have so much free time. So that would be quite counterproductive to your idea that this is going to actually free you up to do other things. The other things that you end up doing are things that you would otherwise not have had to do if you had kind of paced yourself throughout the day. We can see the same thing play out in text messages with friends who, the more you reply, the quicker their replies are coming as well. And that gives you even more to respond to, as opposed to simply waiting for the next time you talk to them in person. And probably the most relatable example here has to do with Netflix, where we have so many choices, right? It's so much easier for us to pick which movie we want to watch. And yet the paradox of choice makes it that much more time consuming to figure out exactly what we want to watch. And this all falls under that idea of the efficiency trap. Being more efficient does not automatically mean being less busy. And if you apply this to his reasoning here, it suggests that if AI is making us more efficient, it does not necessarily mean that we're going to be less cognitively capable. But there are other counterpoints to this idea that I think are worth reflecting on. If we broke down society into two groups, consumers and producers, and sure, there's a lot of overlap between these two groups, but just for the sake of argument, let's say we have these two groups. Within each group, we have those who are doing it by necessity and those who are doing it simply because they can or want to. While the amount of production in society grows exponentially as a result of robots and artificial intelligence, the amount of people, human beings, who are actually involved in that process will shrink significantly. The amount of people who are in the consumer part of the population, simply enjoying for the sake of enjoyment, are going to increase exponentially as well. We can look at intelligence as just another commodity that is under that framework of production and consumerism. It is something that can be produced as a sort of raw material and then applied to create and produce other things. So if we imagine that production is going to shrink amongst human beings, we can also imagine that thinking, our ability to exercise our cognitive capabilities, is also going to shrink as well. And to Sam Altman's point, there are going to be those people who are still utilizing AI to improve on their cognitive capabilities. And these are people who fit into the non-necessity part of production. These are people who, in spite of the fact that AI can do all of these tasks for them, they're still either going to work with AI or they're going to do it by themselves simply because they can or simply because they want to. Whereas most of us are going to be on the consumer side of that ledger and simply enjoying the fruits of AI, simply outsourcing all of our work and labor, physical or intellectual, to these agents to complete for us. So on balance, intelligence is going to be lost in the age of AI, and it's going to be far more concentrated in a smaller part of our population than ever in our history. We've had no precedent for outsourcing our mental capabilities to anything else other than humans. But we do have some precedents for outsourcing our physical capabilities to machines, as we did during the Industrial Revolution, where farms and roads and buildings were no longer monopolized by human physical prowess and energy, and rather it was outsourced to a large degree to machines. And this freed up so much of our energy. Machines were quite versatile in their applications that a lot of what we used to do, whether we're thinking about washing clothes or freezing food or fetching water, just about everything from large to small have all been outsourced to one degree or another to machines. Contrary to the point that Sam is making here, we did not shift from simply doing one labor-intensive task to doing another labor-intensive task. Rather, we shifted from doing labor-intensive tasks to becoming a fat population. Those of us in these more developed countries who are still engaging in such tasks are only doing so because we can or because we want to. We might sow things simply because we want to, not because we need to. We might go to a physical location for groceries simply because we can, not because we need to. And so goes so many other aspects of our lives. And if we get to the root benefit of the physically demanding tasks that we used to do in the olden days, it came down to being healthy individuals, right? Because we were essentially exercising, although we weren't calling it exercise. It was simply the lifestyle we were living. Whereas now, if we want to meet that goal, we can't even just simply supplement what we used to do in the past by going to the grocery store or by taking the stairs as opposed to the escalator. We actually still have to exercise. We have to go out running. We have to create these artificial environments where we can still derive the benefits that we've lost from outsourcing our physical capabilities to machines. So now let's extrapolate from that to intelligence, where we have a similar paradigm shift happening. Intelligence is no longer monopolized by human beings. It's been decentralized and democratized in such a way that everybody has a level of intelligence, not, on their own, but with the help of AI, that is unfathomable to any given individual in the entire course of human history. And this seems even more salient than the Industrial Revolution, because it's not everybody who has the finances to afford these machineries that can do all of these things. As I was saying, there's still a lot of places in the world where that's not possible. And I'm sure even for intelligence, the same thing is probably playing out, where the more financially stable you are, the more intelligence you can afford. I'm not quite sure how drastic that gap is going to be. As someone who has access to, for example, the pro version, is it the pro version? The $20 plan of ChatGPT. I wonder if the difference between that and the $200 plan is really that drastic. I don't think the person who has a $200 plan is that much more well off than I am. But there might be yet more scale differences of this that I am not very, what would you say, privy to, or that might play out more and more. But the point is that it seems quite obvious that we're going through a similar shift in our need to be intelligent ourselves. And I don't think the result of this is that we find other outlets to develop our intelligence. I think rather we're going to be more consumers. We're going to enjoy the fruits of these intelligent machines, and fewer of us are going to be interested in developing our own critical thinking skills in order to communicate with each other and communicate with the machines, and build these machines even better, if they even require our help in doing that anymore. I wonder if the consequences of being a dumber population, which I think is going to happen if you agree with the logic that I've tried to sketch out, is going to be even more pernicious and indiscernible, right? Because you can see someone who is becoming unhealthy. You can see them gaining weight. You can see, their lab works reflective of someone who needs to get ahead of their cholesterol or something like that. When it comes to neuroscience, it's not quite as obvious exactly how being dumber creatures is going to manifest itself in our day-to-day lives, or whether it's going to make us unhealthy per se, right? It might make us less capable of doing certain things, but if AI is able to do those things, does it actually make us as unhealthy as not being physically active makes us unhealthy? It's not obvious to me, and that might be an issue that is worth contending with in the future that we're headed. Perhaps eventually we're going to have to build these dedicated locations where we're able to exercise our critical thinking skills, just as we have these locations where we're able to exercise our physical capabilities in order to stay healthy. Or maybe humanity just continues to languor in our ignorance as AI takes more and more of our workload, and the few people who care to keep sharpening their cognitive abilities become the obscure minority of people out there who might be interesting conversationalists but are not as coveted as they once were. Like the Albert Einsteins of the world are no match for the AIs that are already around and quickly developing.